welcome to another episode of the Hourlings podcast project. My name's Martin Wilsey. I'm your host, but tonight Shay's going to be driving the bus. Shay, take it away.
All right, thanks, Marty. Yeah, I am super excited tonight because this is like my favorite writers in one little square, all together for this podcast. I'm really, really happy. Tonight we have a guest that we're going to be interviewing. So I want to introduce Nicholas Bruner. He's the author of Mother Inc., the first book in the Last Days of Atlantis trilogy. It is out now. He is also a young adult author and one of my great friends and colleagues. So we're really excited to have him on. And Nick, so is this your first podcast interview as an author? Is this your first debut?
Well, thank you for introducing me, Shay. And it is. I've never been on a podcast before. And when I told my kids that I was going to be on a podcast, they said, "Oh, you're going to be famous." So
yes.
I hope I'm prepared for that.
You're going to launch this podcast. We're going to get like 1,000 subscribers after your interview.
Wow.
We're counting on it. Actually, the pressure's on, so make sure it's a good one.
And we're going to give you all 3 of our subscribers.
Yes, exactly. Which may or may not be our moms. We're not revealing that. So what is the plan like so that the book's out now? So what's your plan for like? What do you do? Are you going to do signings, interviews? Do you have a media plan? What's the?
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's very ambitious. I don't have a media plan. I have some advertising plans, and it's done okay for me for YA, but I think it'll work better with the fantasy because this is a trilogy. People love trilogies. People love series. You get the first one out, people want to read the later ones. So I'm hoping that my advertising works out, and whatever presents itself, I'll take advantage of along the way.
Well, you got this podcast. We'll drop your links down below in the description. So that's great. But hopefully with COVID loosening up and things getting safer, you can do some in-person signings. That'd be really fun. In our area.
Yeah, I think that'd be fun. I think it was you who told me not to do those unless they supply wine. So.
Oh yes, wine loosens wallets. I have learned that. Yes, definitely. And even if you have to supply the wine, it's okay. I'll be there. So give us an elevator pitch. What's Mother Inc. about in a couple sentences or
all right.
A few sentences?
Well, I'll give you just a short thing about Mother Inc. So it's a fantasy, and it has several characters, but kind of the main character is 17-year-old Lono, and she just really wants to become a sister at the observatory, where she's been an acolyte her whole life. But on the day of the ascension ceremony, she has a powerful vision, and it sends her outside into the city of Atlantis, and she meets a mysterious crow who leads her to a boy who needs help, Aku. And so she has to decide, is she going to return home, or is she going to accompany Aku on his mission into Atlantis?
I love that crow.
Yeah,
it's a sentient
the name of the crow.
A sentient crow, right?
He's had some experimenting done on him that left him smarter than most crows. So he's a pretty aware crow.
Man, no spoilers.
You learn all that in the first few chapters.
Hey, if it's got an intelligent bird in it, I'm probably there. I like intelligent animal stories.
Do we really know how smart crows are? Like maybe they are already.
Yeah, crows are pretty smart anyway, but this one's probably, even among crows, I don't know if he's a Mensa member, but he's up there.
Well, it sounds great. Sounds very exciting. I might be a little biased because I did read it through the group with you. What kind of fantasy inspired you? So it's Atlantis mythology, right? But you're reimagining it. It's not right from Greek mythology.
I'm glad you asked that because I have a very specific answer.
Okay.
So I don't know if you've ever heard of Roger Zelazny. I believe that's how you say his last name. He wrote something called the Amber series. And what I admired about the Amber series, it came out in the 70s, 80s, maybe even early 90s, is that it was epic fantasy, it was high fantasy, but he did not have any dwarves, orcs, dragons, anything like that. It was all original. In fact, you read it and it's like no other fantasy you've ever read. And that's what I wanted to do with mine. Not that I wanted to have my books be like Amber, because that would be kind of defeating the whole point. I wanted to do something that was high epic fantasy, but had never been seen before. My own types of creatures, my own types of magic, and that sort of thing.
Nick, I'm sorry. You want to go ahead, Marty?
Yeah,
Jump in.
this is the first book in a trilogy, I believe.
Yes.
So, how are you a planner or a pantser? Are you do you outline these things out? Because I found with my series that I had to outline it out, or I'd paint myself in a corner bad time.
Well, I'm definitely a pantser, and in fact, for this first book, I thought, oh, it's a fantasy. There's a lot of world building. I'm gonna for the first time, I'm gonna have to really do some planning, and so I had an outline, and it was several pages, and I got about 2 chapters in, and I said, oh, I just had an idea that's better than any of this. I'm gonna go in this direction instead. So the outline ended up being irrelevant. So I'm a pantser whether I like it or not. I can't help it.
Painters unite. Yes. 2 versus 2 right now, right? Dave, what are you? I forget.
I am kind of a mix. I am mostly a planner in that I do my outlines and everything, but I treat the outlines as a guide, not and I don't use them rigidly. But what I tend to do is I tend to pants the scenes. So I know what's supposed to happen in the scene, but I like figuring it out as I go, and I discover a lot of things that way.
Okay, so it's 2.5 versus 1. Marty's a major planner. You ought to see his office has like a wall-to-wall whiteboard that he uses. It's very impressive.
Oh, it's like at my work, we have the engineers put up big whiteboards with like 300 steps and their engineering stuff that they're going to do.
So as part of that, in your world building, do you do a lot of research too? Because that's, as a planner, I do a ton of research on all my books up front. Do you do a lot of research for your world building?
Well, I did a lot more research than I've ever done for any previous book. I don't know what counts as a lot, but it felt like a lot to me. I read, several books on various topics that I knew I would have to know about.
What's your favorite websites for being a writer?
Well, in these particular books, it's set in Atlantis, which obviously was in the Atlantic Ocean, but I thought of it more as just being an ocean-faring island civilization. And I thought that their language base should be heavily Polynesian or heavily Hawaiian. So there's actually a Hawaiian dictionary site. I'm not taking the Hawaiian language, but I am taking the Hawaiian language as inspiration and just coming up with a lot of terms, a lot of linguistic stuff. And so that is something I've gone back to so many times, that Hawaiian website. I don't know if it's quite Tolkien-esque levels of, I don't know if you could actually speak the Atlantean language, but there's a fair amount of thought that went into that. And that's probably...
In fairness, Tolkien wrote like 20 books of mythology and background, and we got four pieces of fiction. So he might have gone overboard.
Right. Yeah, I'm not to that level.
Let me ask you this. How do you pick your character names? Where do you get your names from?
Well, these are either Hawaiian or Hawaiian inspired names. Lono means something in Hawaiian, means something or is similar to new information, which is kind of appropriate, I think. I think Keki is, I think I looked up the sound that a bird makes in Hawaiian, and then I kind of adjusted a little bit, and Keki is what came out. So, I get Keki, I guess.
I'll confess, I think one of the fun things about writing is if you like to know things, it's all the research you have to do for your stories.
Yeah.
Oh, it's a rabbit hole. I love doing research. And it's a major, I got to be careful because those rabbit holes can go deep.
Yes.
You ever get lost down a rabbit hole doing research on something?
So in one of my previous books, Jesus Bugs, these 2 kids are going down the Black River in North Carolina. And this required me to keep track of MapQuest. None of the towns that show up until the end when they go to Wilmington, North Carolina, are real. They're all fictional little towns. But if you were to look at MapQuest and look at the Black River, you could almost track where they're going. And it even got to the level where I'd be like, well, there's a little island here, and here's where the river splits up. And I don't know if you you could quite get all of that in the book, but as I was writing it, I was definitely keeping track of all that. It was probably to an extent that really wasn't necessary.
Yeah, I love that. I love doing the research for stuff.
When I think of Atlantis, Nick, I think Greek. So are you the first, of your knowledge, are you the first person to unite like Polynesian and Greek mythology?
Well, so the original Atlantis was a Platonic idea. Plato came up with it, but he was a Greek guy, but Atlantis was not Greek. Atlantis was way pre-Greek. It was a fictional thing. He made it up as a joke. People took it seriously, his book about it, but that's not how he meant it. And it wasn't finished was part of the reason. And they were so impressed with his unfinished version of Atlantis that everybody wanted to finish it in ancient times to come up with their version. But they were anti-Greek in a way. So I think when people look back and make Atlantis Greek, I think that they're not actually that wasn't how Plato planned it. That wasn't what he meant. In fact, in his story, his character in the story, his protagonist, his Greek protagonist, was recounting something he had heard from the Egyptians about Atlantis.
So really, it's almost like a global, all over the place.
Right.
Like,
So even in the original conception by Plato, they were not a Greek people, and so that's kind of why I started thinking, well, what were they like? That they must have been. They're on an island. They're on this little speck of an island out in the Atlantic. It must have been, what are island civilizations like? And that's how I started looking at Polynesia. So I probably am the first person to equate them in some way with the Polynesians, I guess.
Interesting. I have lots more questions, but Dave, do you? I feel like I've been hogging all the questions.
Oh, no, I was just curious. Since we were on the line of research and everything, what's the weirdest thing you ever researched?
Oh, the weirdest thing.
The weirdest thing.
Well, I don't know what the weirdest thing specifically. For this book, I've been researching a lot of plants, a lot of medicinal things. I don't know if that's the weirdest thing. I don't know if the weird stuff is coming to mind right now.
He might not be able to say it because this is a PG audience, so he might be very being polite right now. Nice try, Dave. I know what you were looking for.
So here's a question. Do you ever base any of your characters on people you know?
Oh,
do you ever use their real names?
Well, I've never used real names. So I wrote a book called The Love Machine, which is set in a high school in Wilmington, North Carolina, which is where I grew up. And The Love Machine is about an inventor who comes up with a machine. He's a teenage inventor. He's kind of a teenage genius. And he comes up with a machine that you hold it behind somebody's head and it stimulates their amygdala. And the next person they look at after they've been stimulated, they fall in love with. And that's the love machine. But a lot of the things that happen, maybe not related to the machine, but a lot of the things that happen in the book were a lot like things that happened in my high school. And I wouldn't say I exactly based characters on people I knew, but I definitely took types of people I knew in high school and made them into characters.
I love murdering people I know in my books.
I can
use their real names by permission.
Yeah, he murdered me in one of his stories, and
That's
I returned the favor.
I enjoyed that immensely.
Yeah, you have to be murdered. I'm very offended.
If you're curious, it's called a Tuckerization, after Wilson Tucker, who's a science fiction writer who wrote a whole bunch of things, but is known for some time travel stories.
Well, Nick once wrote a short story about an all-powerful supervillain with hundreds of romantic partners, and I think it was based off of me. Isn't that correct, Nick?
Well, that is correct.
Where might that be found?
I had almost forgotten about that story. Yes, that is true. There were a number of characters in there that might have certain similarities to writers of Chantilly.
Yes.
Yes.
Interested readers can go hunting through our anthologies to find this. Yes, our writing group is...
Names are changed to protect the guilty, though.
Just barely though, a very thin covering.
So
Um,
as a pantser here, Nick, how long does it take you from idea to publication to actually do the whole enchilada? How long does it
Longer than it should. I'm getting better. The first book I wrote took 2.5 years and was terrible. The second book took 22 months, I think, and was better, and in fact turned into one of the books that I published, The Ballad of Danny and Eli. The most recent books I've been finishing in under a year. I do think if I outlined more and did your sort of thing, I could finish them even faster, because I spent a fair amount of time saying, what do I do now? Or no, that was the wrong thing. I have to write that chapter over. And that's obviously wasted time. But at this
are you
point,
going to jump ship? Are you going to become a planner now? Is that what you're saying?
well, I mean, that's just how I do it now. So
Yeah, I think that gets baked in early, so it's hard to switch.
Yeah.
I think there's some benefits to being hybrid.
Yeah.
If you want to be a pantser, but kind of control things a little bit, you could sort of plan the broad points of the story and try to connect the dots. And it's not quite outlining, but it's not quite writing into the dark either.
Mm-hmm.
So
I might,
maybe
I'll try a hybrid book.
Adds time to writing. Do you ever get writer's block? Do you believe in writer's block?
I won't say that I've never had something like writer's block, but I hear about people who can't write for weeks, and nothing like that has ever happened to me. I think there are two reasons. If I do reach a point, as has happened on occasion, I have so many other projects that I move to another project for a while. But then the other thing I find, if you keep to your schedule, if you write every day or write every day that you can, and don't miss days, and don't, I write early in the morning, so don't sleep in, don't miss your day. It somehow, it keeps your brain in that kind of mode. It's like I sit down and it's time to be creative. And so something comes out. Maybe it's not something I keep the next day, but usually there's something usable in it.
Well, I think
So
that
do you
comes down to
consider
writers write.
Writer's right. That's right.
That's
you
right.
consider
Yeah.
yourself pretty disciplined about your writing? Do you how much time do you write a day, or do you keep it to a real strict schedule, or you just catch as catch can?
I'm pretty disciplined insofar as I'm able. Unfortunately, I do have that full-time job, but for the past year and a half, well, for COVID, we were on alternate weeks at work. So every day that I was off, and I would have every other week off, I would write every day. So I got in a very disciplined pattern then. So out of, a 2-week period, I had 9 days in a row that I could write.
Are you in the cleared industry?
I am in an industry that, yes, we have clearances.
Yeah, well, we're not talking about that stuff. That's a different topic.
I know. I recognize the symptom.
Dave
I know.
might relate to you.
Since then, I've taken Fridays off. I accumulated enough vacation time that I've been able to take Fridays off since then. So I'm able to write those 3 days. So I'll get up at 5:30, write till 7 or 7:30. And then on the other days when I have to work, if I don't have too many kids to ferry around in the evening, I'll try to get in 30 to 60 minutes of writing then.
So your previous books, before Mother Inc., and I guess I'm just speaking from my privileged position of knowing you and reading your books at the table, they were young adult and most of them contemporary of some sort, except The Ballad of Danny and Eli, magical realism a little bit, I would say.
I would say that all my books may have some element of something a little bit fantastic, even if they're not out and out fantasies.
I would entirely agree with that statement, and that leads me to asking you: does that make it easier to transition into, this is your first like full-blooded fantasy? Did that make it easier to transition genres?
I suppose I have a habit of anthropomorphizing things just around our house anyway. So, I'm not sure that my reality is all that different from what I write.
Hey, I like that statement. That's a good quote. Are you a big fantasy reader?
I was much more of a fantasy reader in junior high and high school. I've been trying to get back into it a little bit.
Yeah, it helps with reading what you write, right?
Right. So
What about
I tried to
science
get back into it, but somehow I've been reading a lot of classic science fiction lately. So
Okay.
Oh, these two are very happy that you said that. They're always harping on
Oh,
me to read
okay.
more,
I,
to read less YA focused.
I like it
fantasy.
all. You read too much YA. You need to.
I read too much YA, what they say, yes.
Yeah, just
Although
read
that's
a
not
lot.
necessarily all bad. I like a lot of YA stuff as well, believe it
Sure.
or not.
well, I'd never read The Left Hand of Darkness, so I read that not long ago. I never read The Mote in God's Eye. I'd always wanted to, so I finally got around to that a couple of years ago.
It's time for Dream Park then.
What is it?
Time for Dream Park.
Oh, Dream Park? I don't know if I know Dream Park.
Larry Niven, Jerry Purnell, et al.
Okay. Oh, that's another one they did together?
Um, murder mystery set in a futuristic theme park. Where
okay.
you like live action role playing games.
Yeah, so we highly recommend you just like read a lot of what you want to write. That's
Totally.
it's a really good practice.
Yep.
Hey, I got another question for you.
Okay.
What is the best piece of writing advice you've ever received? The best piece of writing advice?
It was from a member of Writers of Chantilly, Dana King, and I had heard so often, especially back in my early days of writing novels, I read all kinds of writing advice and writing books, and they always said, write every day, write every day, write every day. And on his blog, he said, write every day, but different people have different versions of every day that work for them. So if you have to do something on Tuesday night, you have to do something on Thursday night, write every day, except every day for you, your week doesn't include Tuesdays and Thursdays. So I kind of took that to heart. Write every day within your process that works. Don't miss days. Once you set it up, don't miss days. But it's okay not to literally write every day and kill yourself trying to adhere to some kind of schedule you'll never be able to meet.
Writing should be fun, right? I mean, if it stops being fun for you.
Dana King as well, so there's another connection.
Ah.
Oh,
Yeah.
you know him?
Yeah.
Well, he gets around
Writers
too.
of Chantilly was my very first writers group in Virginia.
Yes. And he's been there forever, of course.
Yeah, and forever. A long time.
The writing group scene is hopping in Northern Virginia. Let's put it that way. I mean,
I thought of another good piece of advice. I don't know which is better.
okay.
So this is from Dr. Tyler Cowan, who has a blog, a long-running economics blog. But his advice is, when you're writing, don't write yourself out. As in, if you quit writing in the middle of something, you'll be eager to come back the next day. If you write to the end of the chapter, you'll be, in your mind, you're like, oh, I reached an end point. And if you leave in the middle of something, then the next time you come back, you'll be eager, you'll be ready, you'll have been thinking about it, and you'll dive right in. And that's good advice. I don't always follow it, but insofar as I have followed it, that is good advice, I think.
So what's the worst piece of advice?
Oh gosh, so much.
So much. Probably came from me at some point, huh?
Wow. I mean, just, misguided English teachers who think you should, I don't know, lots of commas.
Yeah. Grade school English always comes back to bite you. Without giving any, yeah, go ahead, please.
There are just a lot of people who have very old-fashioned ideas about comma usage and think that we never should have discarded all those commas, and every single phrase should be set off all the time.
Except that I will die for the Oxford comma. Like, that is a hill I will bleed on.
Well, I like the Oxford comma myself.
Oh, good.
But in general, in writing, the trend now is towards less commas, and that's something that I do approve of.
Fair.
Keeps it flowing better.
Without giving any spoilers, you have a very interesting world that you created in Mother Inc. Tell us like a really unique aspect of the world that won't give anything crucial away.
Okay, well, the title, Mother Inc. Mother Inc. is a substance that is harvested in the ocean in the books. I won't tell you the origins of where it comes from, but it's harvested in the oceans, and people use it, and it does all kinds of things because it's sort of related to truth or reality in a way. so that, for instance, if you write a document using the mother ink, it has to tell the truth. You're not able to write a lie. And so it's used, of course, for contracts and things like that. But it's also used for legends. And that's how you know that a history is true, because if you write it with mother ink, it can't help but be true. And also the people use the ink. What are you using for? Tattoos. So they have tattoos. And when you use mother ink, if you just use regular ink, it's called a flat tattoo. But if you use mother ink, it's a real tattoo. And it tends to come out as an animal. It doesn't have to be an animal, but lots of animals, and it will somehow match your personality and enhance your personality, in that your natural tendencies, I guess you could call them powers or magic tendencies or abilities beyond what an average person would have. But it's really just focusing your own personality and powers. So for instance, one of the characters gets a tattoo of a robin, and he's a really good flute player because robins are musical, and he also has other abilities. I won't talk about them because they might come out in the book, but and other characters have different tattoos of different things that
So if you have like one document written in mother ink and one document written in regular ink side by side, how do they look different?
I'm not sure that they would necessarily look different, but when you read them out loud, people will comment, the one written in mother ink, it has the ring of truth. You can hear it in the voice as you read it out loud.
So there is a sense of,
what passes through my mind with that, though, is the idea of doing newspapers in mother ink. The newspaper has to tell the truth.
Right. Yeah, we should adopt that. We should do that.
Yeah, we need that bad.
Of course, the newspapers would be really expensive if we did it that way, but that would be helpful.
but there's a sense of so there's a sense of like detection, like you can detect what was written in mother ink versus what was not. And can everybody detect that, or is it just?
I think anybody could, because you would read it and it would sound a certain way. It would just sound true to you, and you would recognize that's mother ink. Yes. Another thing that people do is they smoke it, which is illegal in the book, but it gives you visions, and they're true visions. They might be of the future. They might be of something that's happening. They might just be a dream that speaks to you in some way that is some aspect of your personality that's true.
I can see all the slogans for your book, the advertisements. I found the truth and I smoked it.
That made Dave's eyebrows wiggle. Dave went.
No, I was like the unintended consequences and the weird tangents you can go with the.
I really like in fantasy and sci-fi created substances. When the author creates a magical substance of some course and of some type and incorporates it into the book. Have you, Marty and Dave, have you guys seen that in literature that you like? Like I'm thinking of Dune right now. That I forget what it's called that they harvest from the air.
The spice melange.
Yes. I love it when books do that. I love substances in books. What do you guys think?
Yeah, write a good book.
That's Marty's answer to everything is just make it good. If you can make it good, then I like it.
Anytime you can do something that add something to a book that affects how people interact with each other and how society works and how perhaps people fight or scheme to get something, whether it's gold or the spice melange or some ancient spice from the caravan routes of Europe and Asia. Those are all kind of neat things to do in a story.
Don't you have some kind of substance in one of your Thousand Kingdoms stories, Dave?
I have some stuff that hasn't been revealed in any of my stories yet.
No spoilers.
Back to Nick.
Okay, back to Nick. Sorry, I get.
So, what's the most difficult part of the writing process for you? I'm only asking because I'm in the last 3% of getting this book out. It's driving me crazy, and it's the hardest part for me. What's the hardest part for you?
Well, I was going to say endings because, as like you said, I don't outline, so it's kind of like you get to the end and you have these threads that you've been weaving together, and you don't want it to be frayed at the end. You want it to all tie together, to keep the metaphor going. And so making it happen, but making it happen in a way that doesn't feel artificial. And I think I've learned to do that better than I used to. I had one book I wrote as a YA horror called Rolled in Bones, and I'm not entirely sure that I wrapped up all the threads together. I mean, I did wrap them up, but it may have felt a little like I was trying too hard.
We all have those. Just gotta move on, right? Next project.
Just keep
All right,
writing.
that's going back to like writing advice. Like the best writing advice that I can think of is
we've discussed that too, and with other writers at the table. We won't name any names, but
right.
Yeah, don't get stuck on a project. Just keep writing. Move on to the next one.
The best way
you'll never advance if you get stuck.
The best way to improve your first book is to write your second book.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes, exactly.
And go back. Yeah.
And then there's Marty.
What's that, Dave?
Marty, say it.
Finish things.
Yeah,
yes.
that's Marty.
Finish things.
That is the best advice I ever received.
This is Marty's catchphrase.
I didn't want to steal his line, so.
Do you mean when you say finish things though, you mean finish it even if you can't finish it perfectly, finish it in some way and move on? Or do you mean something
I am a big proponent of working on a single project all the way until you press publish.
Okay.
Well, I'm going to caveat that a little bit. I have had projects where, especially when I was first starting to write, I think I had a few projects that were a little bit more advanced than I was capable of writing at the time, and I set them aside and finished. I did finish things, but I didn't finish those things, and I'll come back to them one of these days.
Nice. So Nick has a newsletter, which is something that I have not done yet as an author, but I'm interested in doing. So could you give an advice to me and any listeners who are interested in doing like a mailing list type thing for their readers?
Okay. Wow. I'm really more in the need advice column than the giving advice, I think, as far as the newsletter. In fact, I haven't sent it out in several months. I need to, but I've been sort of reimagining what I'm going to do in it, because I'm sort of moving from YA to fantasy. I don't know if that's permanent, but the fantasy has turned out so well that it may be. A lot of it depends on how many people buy it also.
Sure.
So as I do the fantasy and I start up the newsletter again, I want to take more of that be on that track, have my newsletter match what I'm writing, match what's going out, match that audience. And I'm still reimagining how it's going to look, I think. I think one thing that I've read that made sense though is make it chatty and put pictures in it, put pictures of your pets, put pictures of you working on your project or whatever. And I've tried to do that.
Yeah,
Marty has his pet featured in everything, Bailey.
I just want you to know I'm coming out with a newsletter too, and my decision, because I hate writing about myself, was to let my dogs write it.
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah, you put it in a different voice, and that's
I can put it in a different voice, and I can have them say things like, "Yeah, this book's okay, but the next one's going to have a dog in it."
Yeah, that one's going to be great. Have you started coming out with the newsletter yet?
I have a sign-up page, and I'm ready to do my send out my first issue as soon as I have, say, a threshold number of subscribers.
Yeah, I have a mailing list, but I only use it to announce new titles when they're available.
Right.
I know I'm actually signed up for a lot of newsletters. I in fact just today signed up for yours, so I'll be stalking you there too. And
all right, I better get to work on the next one.
Yeah, get busy, damn it. But I don't do the newsletter thing there. I blog. If people want to see my stuff, they can come and look at it anytime.
I'm
also using that
like
in conjunction with BookFunnel.
Yeah.
Oh, BookFunnel, yes. BookFunnel is definitely a tool that I use. That's how you get stuff out. That's how you send. Yeah.
Is that a paid subscription?
It is a paid subscription.
It may be an annual thing, like $15 or something. It's not
that's not bad at all.
Yeah. Actually, it's a little more. The basic is $20, and then there is a which lets you try it out, and then there's a professional, which is like $100 a year.
Sure.
But you don't have to do the 100 unless you.
I don't
need it.
believe I've done the 100 one. I think I must have done the $20 one, and it's had everything that I've wanted from it.
All right, I have a fun light question for you. What drink powers your writing? I know for Marty, it's coffee. How about for you?
So I try not to let anything but water and beer pass my lips. I do have V8 in the morning. So that beer is a reward for a job well done, not fuel.
We like rewards, don't we, Marty? We like rewards after a book.
I do. But, every time I reach a milestone with my books, I have a really good expensive bourbon and a cigar out on the deck.
That sounds good.
Well,
Nick
Nick and I have a tradition of having cigars too, and I think it's once a year is the only amount of time that he would dedicate to that. But
annual cigar.
The annual cigar with me and Nick, I get to wiggle it out of him. But yeah, so are you very saying on air that you have beer while you're drinking, while you're writing, or is that always after?
Always after. Now I do most of my writing in the morning, so I don't usually rush out and have. But in
that would
the
be
evening,
special.
Drink anymore.
Hey, Hemingway always said, write drunk, edit sober.
Hemingway, right?
Hemingway, yeah.
Hemingway, yeah.
When I was in college, we used to, for fun, in my fraternity, we would sometimes get really inebriated and then write poetry and then read it the next morning to see what we had written.
Were there some keepers?
There were some that might not be totally appropriate for the podcast.
For the podcast.
Yeah, see, for me, it was my friends got me drunk, and then they wanted me to draw pictures because I'm an artist as well. In total concentration, I was still able to draw pictures. Perhaps not as nicely as when I was sober.
We'd like to see those pictures at some point, Dave. We'd like to see them.
I don't
sure our
think
viewers want to see them.
But there were people who were amazed that I could even hold the pens.
We won't go into any details about what Marty did in college after he got drunk. Enough said.
We'll leave it at that.
Best to leave it there.
Hey, that brings to mind. Do you listen to music when you write?
So again, I apparently I'm just a very austere writer. I don't know. Not normally, but I do sometimes listen to music before I write to kind of get in the mood or get the juices flowing.
Yeah, I have been interesting to recently discover that I am not the only guy that does playlists for the books that he writes to like set the tone or the chapter.
I've heard of such a thing, almost like a little soundtrack for your book. And I do have certain songs that I might connect with books because I was listening to that song a lot when I was writing the book or something. But I don't have any sort of, like this scene was inspired by this song or anything like that.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the middle. I listen to music, and I do have some, like, usually an album or something that sort of represents the book for me. But I've always been too busy to kind of set up like organized playlists that represent the book. So Marty's ahead of me on that.
Don't you find though that if you have music with lyrics, it starts to infect your writing?
Well,
or to creep in
I
there?
typically get inspiration from music with lyrics, and sometimes a lyric in a song can trigger a plot point in a book or
yes. Okay, that has definitely happened. Maybe not so much plot points in books, but I've had short stories that were inspired by lines in songs or verses in songs.
No, but I've heard what you're talking about, where people find that they're trying to write, but they're distracted by listening to the lyrics. And for me, the solution is this is one of those circumstances where I don't want to listen to like fresh music that I've never heard before. I want to listen to like U2 War, one of my favorite all-time albums.
Okay.
Because I know it, and it's going to slip into the background, and I'm gonna feel the mood, but I'm not going to notice the lyrics because I've listened to it. Right. And so albums like that or movie soundtracks work really well for me.
Is War the one? Does that have I Will Follow on there?
A YouTube War, Sunday, Bloody Sunday,
Oh yes.
Yeah.
all of this.
Sure.
It's their first album that I think it hit #1, but it took like a year to get up to #1, something like that.
I remember that video with the Irish flag and he's waving the flag.
So you're excited about Mother Ink being out. Next one's on the way. Brother Flute, right?
Brother
And then
Flute is
Daughter Cloud.
the second. Daughter Cloud is the third one in the series. Brother Flute is the second one. Yes.
So very exciting in the pipeline. But then what next? What after that? Where's Nick Bruner going?
Wow. Okay. Well, I actually just finished a prequel to the first book that I haven't figured out exactly what I'm going to do, but it's going to be free somehow to readers. Either you'll buy the book and you'll get it free, or maybe you'll read it for free and then get interested in the books. I haven't figured it out yet. And I'm sort of thinking that the prequel, I thought it was just going to be fairly short, and it turned out to be 10,000 words. So it's, I mean, that's what's a novella, 20,000 words. So it's half a novella. It's a pretty good freebie.
Novella is 17.5 and above.
Oh, 17.5.
But then novelette then, isn't it novelette?
Sorry, yeah, novelette is 75.01 to 17.5.
Yeah, so it'd be a novelette.
Above that is a novella up to 40K. Anything over 40K is supposed to be a novel. The definitions I'm using are for like the science fiction awards and the mystery awards and such. So I didn't come up with those numbers.
So you got a novelette on your hands there.
All right. Well, that's
pretty good.
That's fine.
Yeah.
But after that, I have some different ideas. I guess I have 3 ideas. Maybe you guys could tell me what you think. So, I want to continue the Atlantis series, which I guess I'm not giving anything away to say that Atlantis has to sink at the end, right? And it's called The Last Days of Atlantis trilogy. So I have some ideas of how I can get around that.
Those are clues.
Yeah. But my idea is that one of the characters, he's a tough guy. He's kind of a badass, and that he could go to another city on the island of Atlantis and have sort of a fantasy noir kind of adventure. Be sort of, he wouldn't exactly be a private detective, but something like that. He's trying to uncover a secret, and have it would have more of a noirish flavor. I'm thinking of that. I'm thinking of writing a sequel to the YA horror that I wrote that didn't turn out very well, but I almost feel like I want to take another stab at it, and I have some other ideas for the characters. And then the third idea that I have, I've wanted to do this for a while, but I've never been quite sure how I'd approach it. I have this idea that if humans were to die out, I think elephants might take over the world, because they're very smart, they're very social, and they have trunks that they can use tools with. They can build all kinds of things. What would an elephant society look like? And so I've been working on this whole adventure, and elephant societies are matriarchal. The herds are matriarchal, and when the boys become teenagers, they have to go off and become solo elephants. And I wonder if they would think that's unfair. Like maybe the males would revolt. Maybe the females would live in big, prosperous cities, and then the males would be outside the city walls, and they only come in for mating, when the females let them. Well, what if they revolted against that? And so that's what I've been thinking about, but I'm not real sure how
elephants. I vote elephants.
How to handle the elephants. Well, I should have said it, because now everybody's gonna want.
I know, I can't remember the author now, but there is a book, a science fiction, far future science fiction book about an intelligent society of elephants. And I know
Is it
Stephen
really?
Baxter. Yes.
Somebody beat me to it.
Yeah, I want to see that.
Well, no, I don't think that the niche is sufficiently full to preclude another one.
Yeah. Has not reached saturation point.
It's not saturated. No, exactly. We could definitely have more elephants.
And Stephen Baxter wrote a trilogy called Behemoth about woolly mammoths on Mars.
Wow.
Part of the terraforming effort.
I didn't know I had so many predecessors in this. So they reanimated woolly mammoths for Mars? Is that the idea?
The premise is that there's one batch that never died out.
Oh, all right.
And you see most of the books are for Stephen Baxter's trilogy, most of the books are actually written from the elephant perspective.
Wow.
Sounds like fun.
And on that note, it's on the elephant trumpet's call. Is there any last comments you want to throw out to your listeners or viewers that you want to impart?
Wow. You know, buy my books. Don't stop at just one.
Great last words. I love it. Marty, Dave, you guys good?
That's good. Nice meeting you, Nick.
Nick, it was a pleasure. You were a great guest.
If you have to buy a book, buy Nick's. But if you want to buy another one, buy mine.
Yeah, buy mine. Yes, links will be in the description. Please support Nick and go check out Mother Inc. Nick, thanks again.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely.
Take care. Thanks.